So we created this Pathfinder program a little over a year ago, right?
Yep.
And we've gone out and done all of these Pathfinder workshops for Automation Anywhere customers. And through that, we've done these maturity assessments. As a part of the maturity assessments, we've really got a lot of data to say where automation programs are doing really well and where they're struggling.
Yes.
And if we look at all of that data, we can see that there's a couple key areas where a lot of automation programs struggle. And unlocking some of these areas really would enable them to grow in a much greater degree.
Absolutely.
One key area that I think a lot of automation programs struggle with is the way that they do promotion and engagement.
Oh, for sure.
And that's one of the pillars of the Pathfinder methodology. And promotion and engagement is all about the way that you talk about your automation program.
Getting the word out.
Yeah, getting the word out, and especially like aligning with executive leadership.
Absolutely. Another one is pipeline management. That's another big one, right? So you're not going to be able to build any awesome automations if you don't first have some kind of pipeline and a way to prioritize. How do you evaluate when you have such a huge demand? How do you even evaluate them and prioritize, decide what to do next?
Absolutely, and those two are directly related.
Absolutely.
Because if I don't talk about my program, no one's going to know to submit an idea.
I'm not getting any ideas.
Yeah. Now, we are sitting here with Ken, and Ken helped to create CoE Manager.
Absolutely.
And Ken, I want to hear from you. How does CoE Manager enable automation programs to really accelerate in these two key areas and find value from their automation program that they can easily communicate?
I think traditionally, right, you've seen it before, in these programs oftentimes they start with, let's find the low-hanging fruit,
right,
which doesn't always turn into the most valuable opportunities to automate. And so the struggle always is, if it has a pure IT focus, it sometimes can have a challenge when you want to go communicate to the executive team about the value that this program is having and we want to expand it. The question always comes in, where's the value, where's the impact coming in? So if you have a system of record, if you think of it that way, you have a central place that's focused a little bit more on the value and speaking in the terms of the way the business leadership wants to understand the impact of an automation program, that's when you start to gain their attention, because you're talking about it in a way that's not about how many bots I've executed, but actually how much value I've driven in or contributed back.
100%. What you just mentioned, Ken, that's a major theme of Pathfinders. We talk about performance management, right? Exactly what you just mentioned. You go to a CFO and say, we implemented 1,000 lines of bot coding. You haven't got their attention, right?
Who cares?
Right? Absolutely. But the minute you start talking value, they light up, and if you're delivering good value, they want to know, like, give me more of that, right? How can we do more of that? So CoE Manager is directly helping us with that.
And if you think about it in the context of not only what you delivered, but then if you start to have it in a place where you can see the backlog, it's more about, here's what we've done, here's what we're working on, and oh, by the way, here's what's in the backlog that we need to optimize, we need to start to work on. That gets everybody's attention.
Yeah, that pipeline visibility to say this is where we're at and this is where we're going, I think is really important. Ken said something else I really want to touch on, which is the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
A lot of automation programs, and we even encourage this, we say get started with the low-hanging fruit.
The quick wins.
Because we want to get started with those low-risk, low-complexity automations. I think where programs will struggle, though, is that's all they think about.
Right.
Like, how do you move from, if you're a baby drinking milk, to starting to have solid foods? And that's really about starting to grow your program. And I think that's where you need to start to maybe evaluate the automation opportunities in a better way.
Yes.
Talk to me about some of the ways that you can evaluate automation opportunities in CoE Manager and how you can have these visualizations around priority and which ones might be the next best fit.
And because it's not always just a financial or an impact from like an hour saved. There's other elements to evaluate. So what you really want to have is a couple things. You want to have a standardized way, so there is no loudest person in the room gets their automation every time. So you want to have a way that kind of reduces the emotion of which ones we should do next is always helpful. And then try to align it to a couple different factors, right? There's a financial component, but then there's a non-financial impact of the process itself. And then there's alignment to things like the goals of the organization. So there's a strategic kind of impact, as well as then a complexity. How difficult is this thing going to be to implement?
That's important.
And all of those factors you need to kind of come at play and then compare them together to create, the concept of the old bubble chart and the quadrantized moves where you're going, I have all of these areas. The one that you should work on or the priorities almost start to fall out naturally when you start to take that type of approach.
I love that, Ken. So we've been using CoE Manager for our internal automation program in Automation Anywhere. And I love what you were just saying, because if there's a centralized pool of developers, what we would call automation creators, there can be some contention for those resources, right? We've only got so many resources. Maybe those resources are servicing the whole organization. So I like to say in CoE Manager, we can almost have like a wall of fame and a wall of shame when we look at the different business units, right?
Exactly.
So it's changed the conversations we can have where we can talk to the marketing folks, and this is a completely made up example for all the Automation Anywhere employees, but we can say, marketing folks, like, look how rich your pipeline is. Oh, but finance, what's going on with you guys, right? Right? And obviously all in the spirit of encouraging the right kind of behaviors, like let's think about some ideas.
When you have visibility to all of this data and you have it focused, you can gamify it a little bit, right? The gamification of it becomes the interesting piece to it.
Yeah.
And all it is just highlighting what's actually happening in these programs and putting a face to it, which is different than to the point of technical discussion. It's a face to a program that becomes a little bit more tangible for executive teams and the rest of the organization to understand what's going on.
Now, I do want to clarify something, that when people do submit an opportunity, you know what area of the organization it came from, right?
Correct.
And so there will be times when, as an automation leader, you want to have a strategic focus on a particular functional area, right? We've called these before like the trump card of like, hey, I want to expand into that functional area. They finally submitted an idea. I might want to prioritize that one, even though it may not be the next best in my priority. But that is another area and another consideration for automation leaders as they're kind of reviewing these intakes.
Absolutely. And Micah, you were talking about in Pathfinder, this whole area around the pipeline. So being able to visualize things in CoE Manager, not just in terms of who's using or consuming the automations, but also the contributions.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really interesting to see where the idea is coming from, where the good idea is coming from, right?
Right.
How rich is the pipeline in different areas is a really useful thing.
And as you start to see that, it allows you to double down too on those areas. If you start to see this area is starting to get really interested because the ideas are picking up the volume of even ideas.
Yes.
That leads you to double down in a certain area as well and say, we can really make an impact in this area. It's starting to catch on. Perhaps we should go have a couple different types of conversations, because those conversations are going to be much more receptive than trying to go to a different area that's never really done anything before.
Right. One of the most important things in CoE Manager, I think, also is it's important to see what we expect in terms of the forecasted value. Also important to see what value we're actually getting out of it. And I think that's also something that we get out of CoE Manager. What's the actual value we're getting, not just what we thought we were going to get, right?
Right. And it's the closed loop, right?
Yep.
It is the take it full circle from we want to do X, whatever the outcome happens to be. Then we go start to get those ideas that come in.
Love it.
We start to get the prioritization. We start to get the forecast of what we think we're going to deliver.
Right.
And then when we can close the loop, that's the beauty of the CoE Manager and having it connected into the back end to actually extract actuals.
Yeah.
You get the value, which you can see. We thought we were going to save X, and we're saving X plus,
Yes,
right? And,
yeah.
and those are the stories that everybody wants to hear.
Absolutely.
It's great. That was awesome. Well,
Thank you, Ken.
for automation programs who may be struggling in these key areas, I would encourage you to take a look at CoE Manager.
Absolutely.
It's more than just tracking your metrics on the output, but it's forecasting, it's opportunity intake. So definitely worth taking a look. And Ken, thanks so much for stopping by and having a chat.
A pleasure, guys. Appreciate
Thanks for the
it.
time.
Cheers.